Thank you for coming. So this is called our Bloomingdale Salon Series, one of many. And today we're actually featuring our fashion designers and founders, BruceGlen. I'm not sure. Bruce Glen. Got it. All right. So Juneteenth is also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, Liberation Day, and Emancipation Day. Juneteenth is now a federal holiday celebrating the emancipation of African Americans and Black Americans who have been enslaved in the United States. Juneteenth is American history, and today we have fashion designers, as I mentioned before, BruceGlen, living our ancestors' dreams. BruceGlen have gone full steam ahead, expanding their handbag collection as well as ready-to-wear. I'm going to go ahead and hand that off to Tadre.
Thanks everyone for coming. I'm really excited about today's discussion because I'm excited to learn about the men behind the brand. So I think we'll just hop right in. Tell us a little bit about your origin story. Who are you? Did you fall into retail or fashion, or was this something that you endeavored to do throughout your adolescence?
I want to say, like, that phrase, "We're living our ancestors' dreams." I'm in tears already. You know what I mean? I'm holding it back.
It doesn't take much for him to be in tears.
I mean, that alone is just like, that's really something to think about, you know. Let me just back it up then. So we were kids and we were very artistic. We didn't go outside much. You know, we would be in the house like drawing and things like that. And we always wound up like drawing girls in dresses. And we didn't think to ourselves like, I'm designing, or, you know, I'm trying to put together an outfit.
Yeah, I think we knew we loved fashion. We knew we loved the way that, you know, people were styled on television, and we wanted to sort of kind of put that on paper and kind of, you know, experiment and play with different shapes and different things like that. And so when we were younger, I remember we made, and we've told this story before, so maybe you've heard it, but we made paper dolls with interchangeable outfits. And I remember we took clear plastic tape, and then we put glitter on it, and we cut it in the shape of a dress. And our little paper doll had every color sequin dress for the club you can think of. And my mother found those paper dolls, and she said, "What the is this?" Okay, she was a black mother growing up in the hood. She didn't want to raise boys playing with dolls. And I remember she made us throw those dolls away. And you know, later on in life, she understood that, you know, her understanding of, you know, who could be in fashion and what that meant grew. So she was much more accepting about our choices as far as our career later down the line.
Okay. That's actually really, really interesting to talk about. I also grew up with really religious family,
Mm-hmm.
right? And based on your story and what I know about you all as preachers, there are many yes, and there's a lot of challenges as it relates to that growing up in Black bodies in that kind of environment. Can you speak a little bit about what that experience was for you once you learned that you wanted to really pursue this? How did you break that to your family, and then all of the things that kind of come with that?
You had some, yeah. So we really, because of that, we really didn't decide that we were going to go to school for fashion. We were going to go to Morehouse for business.
Yes.
Because you could break into fashion, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And we could design. We don't even want to teach us how to design. I can design. You know, so we didn't really go to school for fashion design in our minds. But then we got a really great offer from a liberal arts school, Albright College in Reading, Pennsylvania, and they gave us like 2 years. Our first 2 years, like were virtually covered, like with scholarships and things like that. So we decided to go to Albright College at the last minute. You know, like
we had a fashion design.
No one could say anything about it. No one could ask us questions about it. And I said, I'm going to be a fashion designer. I'm studying fashion design at Albright College, and I was gone. And then he was fashion merchandising and business marketing. And so we got to the college, Albright College's campus, which, like, who goes to, and you're going to be a fashion designer, who goes to Albright College in Reading, Pennsylvania? You know what I mean? Like, who does that, you know? But there was also some intimidation on our parts, like going to New York to design. And I don't think we felt like we were ready. And but Albright College happened to be the exact perfect place that we needed to be in order to sort of launch our career.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. Speaking of the launch of your business, you launched your business with launched your business with accessories, yeah, and then you expanded into ready-to-wear. What was the thought process behind that? So was that a plan born of desire or necessity? Meaning, the development cycle for accessories is very different from that of apparel, right?
Sure.
And it can be less costly because you don't have grading, you don't have as many notions, you don't have as.
You know what you're talking about, Tom.
Listen. All right, I know you. I see you. All right. So tell us a little bit about that. It's part of the reason that I think a lot of emerging designers too like start with t-shirts and So what was that choice and how did you get there?
So the more popular story is that we started with accessories, but really in 2006, 2007, we started with the full ready-to-wear line. And we had received $33,000 angel investment. If you're going to tell this story, you better tell this story. So we had gotten to New York City and we were working out internship. And at the end of...
He wants to tell the long version of every story, and I'm trying to keep it,
What you want?
I want the truth.
What you want? So we moved to New York City, and we were interning for House of Darion, Beyonce's company, throughout the summer.
Craziest internship of our lives.
Crazy. Not because of Beyonce. Beyonce, we met her once in the whole process, and she was wonderful. Oh my goodness, she gave us the dream of Beyonce. And you just know why she is who she is. Anyway, so our cousin David, he says, twins, that's what our family calls us, you need to start your own collection. And I said, yeah, 5 to 10 years. Yeah, we just got to, get some experience in this industry first. We're still wet behind the ears. And he says, no, start it now. And it was like an echo, now.
And we really didn't know where to start because, we had no funding. We were interns in New York City. I think we got $150 a piece a week. Maybe not even a piece. Was it a piece?
It was a piece.
A piece. Which in New York City, even back then, is nothing, right? And so
Back then was 16 years.
16 years ago. So we decided to write a business plan because we had come from an entrepreneurship program in our high school. We wrote this very elaborate business plan that required like $500,000 seed capital. And as soon as we finished the business plan, we got a phone call from one of our mentors who said, I'm writing a book on young entrepreneurs. I want you to come down to DC. We're going to do a photo shoot and I'm going to interview you. After the interview, she asked us, so what's next for BruceGlen? And we said, well, since you asked, and we put out this big old business plan. We slapped it on the table, and she invested $33,000 in our business, and we launched a ready-to-wear collection. And we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know anything about fabrics. We didn't know anything about fitting. We changed the fabric of a denim halfway into production. The jacket didn't fit. Everybody loved the jacket, but we shipped it to boutiques. It was a mess. Yeah. We squandered the money. And so we stopped. We were off and on. And then in 2019, we relaunched with, it's a lot more in between, okay? Right. But in 2019, we relaunched with a handbag, and that led into ready-to-wear. One of our mentors, she told us, she said, just stick with accessories. And, when you're a young designer, you want to do everything, you want to, design a full collection, and you ain't got no money for it. You want shoes and everything. And you're like, what shoes? Yeah. Who's going to make shoes,
And she said, stick with accessories. Accessories always fit. And she would grab our face like this. She said, boys, accessories always fit. You don't have to fit it. You just stick with accessories. And we said, okay.
Now, I want to pause somewhere because you talked about getting this $33,000 investment, and you talked about it disappearing for, to put it delicately. Where did it go? How did you use it? Because that's a sticking point.
I used to think $33,000 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
My goodness, it's gone.
Listen, someone says I got $50,000 for you right now. It's already gone in my head. I know exactly where I can spend it. It's $50,000, and this is not because I have a lot of money, but because I know the business and how it can go just like that. And we can make $50,000 to $200. You know what I'm saying? But you need that $50,000 first. And so $50,000 is not a lot of money when you're trying to run an operating business that is in retailers and that you want to keep marketing up. You want to have a runway show. You know how much that runway show costs?
That's on my list.
Oh my gosh, we just got finished. That was in February. We just got finished paying it off. Okay, look, I'm writing emails to people saying, "Hey, we love you, we good for it. You know what I'm saying? They was like, don't worry, we understand. I said, thank you, Jesus.
So that money went to production, it went to fabric, and before you know it, the money's
So we probably bought a few outfits too, if I want to be honest.
Okay, so the production piece is interesting for us to go into a little bit more deeply, because what a lot of people do, especially early on, is they spend a lot of money sampling. So is that part of where, fabric costs, sampling, cuts that don't fit well, reorganizing after the cuts, you learn that the cuts don't fit well.
Sampling is probably one of the biggest expenses. I mean, now because of our operating partners, which I'm sure we'll get into, we've cut down sampling expenses very, 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 very closely, right?
Yeah,
but now
they still exist.
They still exist, but we like to develop things that our operating partners, which is our sustainable partners in the Dominican Republic, cannot do. So we do those in LA. And so I think for this show, how much did we spend for this show in just sampling, like out of pocket?
Out of pocket.
Probably about 10,000, 11.
Which is very small, right?
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah, so our operating partners have helped to cut down that cost.
Okay. And our operating partners are so wonderful. They flew things in like 2 days before the show. They put people on the plane with suitcases of our garments. We really got into a really blessed situation.
Yes, we're getting there.
We're getting there. Okay, we're moving ahead.
We are getting there. Okay, so I think one of the things that's really important to delve into is pricing, especially for emerging designers and people that are in a creative space and trying to figure out the business piece of it. How did you determine pricing and your markup? Did you do Keystone like a lot of vendors do? Did you choose another route? How have you approached that?
Well, you know what? So in the very beginning, obviously we weren't in retailers. So we were at a very low price point. I think not low, but
contemporary
compared to what it is now, right?
Now we're at an advanced contemporary price point.
So what is that price point? Tell us, for those that don't know in the audience that are interested.
So we range from $150 all the way up for a t-shirt,
okay,
right?
That clear.
Okay. T-shirts, I think we can get at $110, right? But our turtlenecks, right, which sell a lot, we $150 all the way up to, depending on the pricier items, like a sweater dress could be $8.95.
Okay. Yeah. So in terms of your margin, how did you determine what that needs to look like? Did you back into it? Did you say, okay, I think that this is a comfortable place from a retail perspective that we can sit next to, vendors that we feel good about? What do we have to do from a cost perspective to get to a place where we can run our business at that place? Or did you start opposite and assess your costs fully and then?
Listen, we gonna always make sure we get our money first, okay? So
we don't take anything less than double what it costs to make it.
Right.
So we make the money back that it costs to make it, and then we make double that.
Right.
So we make our money.
Right.
I don't care what it costs in the end. No, not I don't care what it costs in the end, but if it costs too much for retailers to respond to and that doesn't make sense, then we need to reassess.
Right.
So sometimes that is modifying the garment or just taking it out of the running in general. Because we know that, what works for us is contemporary, advanced contemporary, because once you start to get a certain price point, you get into luxury.
Yeah.
And at this point, realistically, pie in the sky, yes. But realistically, at this point, we can't compete with a luxury brand that is a European house that everyone has known for. Our bag's going to sit beside theirs, and they're going to go for our bag, a brand that they don't know. Pie in the sky, yes. But realistically, as a...
What are you saying, pie in the sky?
It's like a...
No, I've never heard him say that term before. I'm with him every day.
I know, it just came upon me. Maybe it's sitting in this room. I don't know. It just came upon me. I don't know. So we always start with how much it costs, and then we double that so that we make our money back and more.
Okay. So marketing. Tell us a little bit about how were you able to amass your first followers, and then from there, how did you amass a larger following such that you would be able to gain entry into doors like Bloomingdale's and Saks?
We had always so we're ministers, right? So I think that's where the bulk of our following came from at first, because we're kind of like different kind of ministers, that appeal to a different crowd, which is like our church is full of young artists, fashion designers, models, actors, singers, dancers. They collaborate with one another. It's a really beautiful community. So we had a little bit of a following in that community, and those people are very connected in their respective industries. And then I think like one of our first big fashion hits was like the Shade Room, and it was during the pandemic, and they were highlighting Black designers, and we were in the mix of like other names, and then all of a sudden I'm sitting in like a meeting at church, and we're discussing, growth of the ministry and stuff. And then my phone's like, like, can someone turn off their phone? And I'm looking, I'm like, excuse me, I gotta go to the bathroom. And I'm like in the bathroom, like, oh my gosh, where are all these followers coming from? And I'm like spending 10 minutes tracing it back, I thank God for, the Bible says that he'll take beauty or ashes and turn them to beauty, like out of the pandemic. Come on now, right? And she said, amen, yes, Lord. And so out of the pandemic, a lot of, it was a hard time for a lot of people. And, so I don't like to say I could be like, the pandemic was good for us. And people were like, it was terrible for me. I went through a lot, so, and I do understand that.
Right.
But I really do believe that it created an opportunity for a lot of designers, people in the fashion industry.
In the BLM movement, yeah, that was a movement that really opened up a lot of doors for designers like us.
Right. Obviously, the murder of George Floyd, there was a lot of energy.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that was helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it was. To
the
support,
energy of it was helpful.
Yeah, to support Black businesses and Black designers. The 15% pledge came out of that. A whole bunch of different movements that
support as an organization. For many businesses, there are key products that power the business, right? So whether that's fragrance or accessories, and that really becomes the driver for other things that the other creative endeavors that the business plans to undergo. What are your key product drivers? Is it really the accessories? Is it the ready to wear, which I think is newer, at least in the most recent iteration? How are you keeping it, what's the engine?
Yeah. It has been the ready to wear. The ready to wear has far surpassed the bags. It's probably about 85 to 90% of our business now, the ready to wear. And I think it's just people, we always like to say, or we've noticed that people are responding to just what flows out of us naturally, because for a very long time we were trying to be this brand that we thought we needed to be, all cut, prim and proper. We were beige. Our logo wasn't what it was today. It was in script.
Okay.
And I remember we met with a woman who calls herself a brand anthropologist. She was very kooky. She had like this big old law apartment in Dumbo, and wild hair, and her husband was a sculptor. It was the scene. You can imagine the scene. And she's like, "This isn't your brand. This doesn't feel like you.
I've been talking with you for 2 hours.
Electric.
And I have a sense of who
Get
you
a new
are.
font, something blocky. Okay, yes, that's it.
But it's flashed
It's
down
two
the
of
middle.
them, split it down the center. Okay, yeah. All right.
Color that red. Color that white.
Okay, yes, okay. That's it. BruceGlen.
Okay.
And we're like, okay.
I'm
this
not
is it.
exaggerating. That's exactly how the meeting was. And I was like, it was like sitting with a mad scientist,
And literally our logo came out of that meeting.
And she said, "This is your brand.
You're
See the
fun.
electricity
It's
in this?
electric. It's bold.
Embrace
it's
that.
exciting.
Embrace it."
It's who you are, We're like, yes, you're right. It is who we are,
And we still didn't get that. We didn't get that moment. We didn't understand what she was saying until
years later. It's when we really understood. And when we really designed what flowed out of us naturally, as opposed to sort of like trying to mimic other successes that we saw. That's when we begin to see success. And I think that everyone has something very unique, a special blend of spices that are inside of us each individually that we were meant to pepper the world with. And when we try to make it look like someone else's, we do a disservice to ourselves and a disservice to the world, because there's someone that's looking for exactly what you have.
Right. And the other person that's in the market is already doing that thing.
Come on.
So, if I got so-and-so, I don't need...
Why BruceGlen?
Exactly. talk to us a little bit about your creative process. So prints are, integral to your brand foundation, at least in its most current form. How do you get there? Do you take far-flung vacations where you go and get inspired? Do you have another thing that you do? Like, what is your ritual, or do you have one?
Actually, I felt so much because I used to read, in WWD when they're like explaining the collection each season.
And everybody's got a story.
And Donatella Versace is like, I went to Greece and I laid on the beaches of and I was like, oh, that's nice to be inspired by a collection that way, And we actually had one of those moments in our spring collection. We were like super busy. We were super pressed. And our friend, we live in California now. She was like, let's go to Joshua Tree. We didn't make it all the way to Joshua Tree. We only got to Yucca Valley. We thought we were in Joshua Tree. It was close enough. They had Joshua trees, but it wasn't actually Joshua Tree. And she was like, I know you're feeling stuck. Why don't you, come with me to
it didn't make any sense because we were like maybe 2 weeks out from the show. We still had so much to do, but we were like, just forget everything. We want a Joshua Tree. We want to chill in a jacuzzi in the desert. That's what we want to do right now. And we did that, and we wound up going to some vintage stores, and we were like hugely inspired by that trip. And so that was the first time like we were inspired by a trip, and like it really did pay to like step away and like take some time. And we realized that, but sadly enough, the designing and the creative portion is probably about 20% of what we do. And most of the time we're behind a computer, we're answering emails, we're communicating with buyers, we're doing all the business of fashion rather than the creative process.
And I'm the creative person of the two of us. Well, we're both creative, but I'm just creative in the design department. And I have to fight Glenn to say, I cannot work with you on that. I need to design. Like, I have to fight him. You know what I mean? He's like, I need you to answer those emails. And no. You need to look at this with me. I'm like, Glenn, I need to just sit on the couch. I need to put on some India Ari. And I need to design right now. And I have to fight him in order to do that. Because there's so many other areas of the business. But once
I've learned, right? I've gotten better to let you just have your process. And then he'll go and he'll design, I don't know, things. I'm like, Bruce, that's not going to sell at retail. Not at all. So, and I'm like, well, let's do it for the runway show, please. And then like he'll let me have one or two of those things for the runway show. But he was like, just design another version of this. They're going to ask us. They're going to ask us, do you have another version of last year's bestseller in this? Do you have another turtleneck in a fun little swirly print? And he says, so just design another version of this, and you can do that too. But design, So it's a balance between the two of us. We're inspired by fabrics. We're inspired by color. We go into the market a lot and just kind of like look at things. And the trip to Yucca Valley really inspired us. But unfortunately, maybe that's just now. Hopefully not. Hopefully in the future as we expand, design takes a backseat to everything else that we have to do.
For the prints, do you manage that process on your own? Do you partner with like a print designer? How do you do that piece in order to kind of, because there's a lot of blended prints too, so I could see how that workflow could get heavy quite quickly.
We, for the most part, we design all the prints ourselves.
Got it.
Our operating partner, they have an art department too, who can kind of help us recolor things and things like that. But for the most part, we do everything. Yeah.
So how do you navigate in your business and personal lives balance as brothers? I could see a world
balance? We don't know what that is.
I could see how that could sometimes be difficult. Do you have like, okay, at 5:30, this is now our personal brother time, and then everything prior to that is, our business time, or how do you navigate that?
I don't know. It all just flows together, to be quite honest. We spend a lot of time working. We work a lot more than people probably actually think, because our Instagram looks like we're twirling around having fun all day, and that's purposeful because that's the brand. It's happy, it's exciting, it's fun. It welcomes you into a world of jubilescence. But we work a lot. We're probably working most of the day. We take our breaks to go to the gym just to kind of clear our head, to go for walks and things like that. But we've at this point have made a decision not to work on the weekends, to really take the time off unless we have like crazy deadlines. So we'll take Saturday and we'll do whatever we want to do, whether that's lay on the couch and watch Netflix all day and maybe fiddle around with some design or, go out to eat, whatever the case may be. So we're working a lot.
Okay. We don't have a lot of balance these days. But we used to like I'd rather right now, maybe I might get tired of it later, but right now I'd rather like spend a lot of time like pouring into the business. Because we used to be, up until about 2 years ago, we used to be spread so thin, like pouring into other people and other people's projects and meeting with people about their things because we're ministers. And so the way that our ministry was set up was that we were open, like people could just walk into our house, you know what I mean? That sort of thing. And then 2 years ago, we made the decision to just kind of keep things for ourselves and like kind of like close off like a lot of like openness and communication that we were giving ourselves to, even as ministers. And that has been hugely, it took a lot of training. It took a lot of like, fighting back guilt and all those things. But it came a point where we realized how necessary it was because we were going to go crazy. And we made a lot of changes in the last 2 years, and we do spend a lot of LA. We moved to LA from New York, all those things. It was a huge shift, and I can't even express to you like how monumental that shift was. Because you see on the internet, you need to keep for yourself. You need to make the little memes like you protect your peace. You know what I mean? And I used to read it and sometimes even quote it, but I never lived it. And when I really decided to like live that and separated ourselves a lot.
Although we work a lot, we love to work, and we get the honor because we used to work a lot for other people. Right. We were working around the clock to make other brands successful, but now we get to work for ourselves. So it's our baby. It's what we enjoy. It's our passion. So we could work around the clock on what we love doing and what makes us happy, and the fact that we don't have to answer to anybody. We don't have to go into anybody's. We don't get up before 10. We made that decision. People were like, but you're a business, rise and grind. I said, I didn't start my business to get up at 6 a.m. If I was going to work for someone else, then I could get up at 6 a.m. But like, and people want to make us feel bad for not getting up before 10. I'm like, that is my boundary. That is what I have set for myself, and I can do that now. And that's none of your business. You know what I mean? It's actually my business. You get it? So like, we don't take any phone calls before 10. We don't take any calls on Friday. And we have just recently, like in the last 2 months, set weekends that we're not going to work unless we want to, unless we feel inspired to design or something like that.
So your stance on sleep seems to fly in the face of one of the luminaries that you've worked with or worked in connection with, and that would be Sean Combs. Mm-hmm. What was that process like? I'm assuming that came after Darion. I know we skipped a lot of stuff, so I'm cherry picking the things that I want to know about. But where was that in your journey, that experience?
So we've had like, I guess, a pretty extensive career when I look back at it, working for a lot of celebrity brands, and we kind of got into this thing where like, I guess people became to know us for designing these like crazy urban collections. And so we were working at American Rag at the time, which was right after House of Darion, and Bruce was designing non-denim woven bottoms, and I was designing tops and dresses, and it was the #1 selling brand at Macy's for about 6 years while we were working there. And so we had connected with Jeffrey Tweedy, who was the president of Sean John. He had left Sean John, came to House of Darion. That's where we met. Found out we were both from Washington, D.C. He became a mentor. Then he wound up going back to Sean John. And he would always call us to do these projects. He's like, we need this. And, so we would scurry to put together these projects. It would be a whirlwind of a moment. Like, oh, okay, we'll have it for you by tomorrow. And we'd be up all night, like, working on this project. And we're like, Jeff, what's going on with the project? He's like, yeah, they scrapped it. I'm like, what? We done worked all night on that thing. And so it all paid off because like a couple of years later, he's like, we were trying to revamp the women's line. We're getting a lot of resistance. We want to bring you guys inside to kind of critique it and to give us your feedback.
because it's selling at Macy's and you guys have successful brands at Macy's, so we want you to do something for us. And so we had like maybe a month-long process of interviews and line critiques and all that stuff.
We didn't meet Diddy.
We didn't meet Diddy at this point. We were working for a licensing brand that was making the collection, a licensing company that was making the collection, the women's brand. And so we got hired, we started working there, and then we eventually got laid off because we had devised this whole plan to build out this whole collection. We designed like 4 collections. The woman who, we had devised this plan was, she got a new job at Macy's, and she left Macy's and went to some other company. New buyer comes in, sees the track record of the brand, and is like, we're throwing this brand out. And
without even seeing our collection.
None of our collections had even hit the floor just yet. And so we're like, what's going on? No! Because we got this big old salary with Sean John. We done got a huge apartment up in Harlem with a jacuzzi tub and a fireplace and all marble fixings. Sugar Ray Leonard's daughter used to live in the apartment, That's how nice it was. And then we can't even pay our rent because we done got laid off, But working there was a huge change and a shift in our career because we had a lot of freedom. We had a lot of say-so. We were the co-creative designers, directors of the brand. And that kind of gave us a little bit of a taste of like just a new level of fashion. Yeah. So before it was like American Rag, they go to Europe, they get samples, and our boss would literally hand us a sample from Europe and say, make it cute. That's it. And then she was like,
which just means put some more lace on it.
Give me 5 iterations. Give me 5 iterations of this one sample that I brought back from Europe, And so now we were having fun with fashion. And, I would go into the office, I would get dressed up, like I didn't get dressed up in American Rag. I felt like, someone on TV going into, you know what I mean? Like I felt
Miranda Priestley.
Right, I felt like Miranda Priestley or something. I was having my Sex and the City moment. We would, stay in the office at 12 o'clock at night. We'd be the last ones to leave.
We had assistants who sketched everything. We were no longer sketching stuff. Sketch up that. I need them all by 5.
I would get in my cab at the end of the night, going down the West Side Highway, looking out the window, you know what I mean? It was a moment for me, you know what I mean? So it really introduced us into a new level of like the design world. And we got to meet Diddy twice. The first time we met him, he was just like really like, y'all twins, okay, all right. And then the second time we met him, we had this presentation, and we had like spent so much time because we knew we were going to present it to him personally, and we laid it out, and then we said this and this, this.
And so after we finished presenting everything, he sat back and he looked at us. He said, "Shut that door." And we said, "Oh my God, what's about to happen?" We didn't know. Because this was like walk across the bridge and get your cheesecake dinner. You know what I mean? I was like, are we going to have to walk across this bridge and get his cheesecake? I don't know what's going to happen. But then he gave us like one of his famous Diddy pep talks, He was like, y'all black men in the industry, y'all have an opportunity. I got twins, you know what I'm saying? Look at y'all with y'all funky hair. Look at y'all with y'all hair. Y'all brought that fresh out of school, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And when I saw y'all twins, I got twin daughters, you know what I'm saying? I was like, all right, they bring it. It was like, and Cassie was showing me, what's that thing? Yeah, so this how long ago this was. He was talking about Cassie. It's like, Cassie was showing me that new thing. We were trying to figure out what he was talking about. He was like, Tumblr. And we're like, oh, Tumblr. And he was like, she was showing me all the design, like different thing, inspiration from Europe on Tumblr. I'm gonna send Cassie to the office. She gonna work with y'all. I'm like, okay. And so I have me and you ready. Me and you.
Stay on track.
Needless to say, Cassie never showed up, okay? Cassie didn't show up.
Okay, so, all right, this is actually a good question. It's a great segue. All right. How has your identity as Black designer shaped your experiences in the retail market? And that's with retailers, that's with trade shows, and even with customers.
My goodness, imposter syndrome. I tell you, it's the craziest thing. Because we're constantly in like these crazy rooms with people that you would. By crazy rooms, what do you mean? I mean, lots of influence, lots of people with big names and things like that. And very often I have to fight against feeling that I don't belong in these rooms, So I think that's been one of the main things, like navigating that, figuring out or coming to the realization that, I didn't put myself in that room. Really, it was the hand of God that allowed me to be in that room, and if He allowed me to be in that room, then I'm supposed to be in that room. Come on, Nelson. I got something to offer here. You know what? But I think like coming off of the BLM movement and George Floyd, most of the situations that we have gone in have been very, aside from there are situations like what Glenn is describing, but they have been very catered to you, like, hey, which sometimes feels a little weird too, you know what I mean? I don't know.
They're like, something up your sleeve, what you got?
It's nice, but also it's a little weird, you know what I mean? And then like, people get on call and they're like really careful. It's weird. So like they'll be like, so we want to welcome you into the store. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. This is one of our dream retailers, and they'll be like,
what's next
in addition to that, we're doing an initiative. Okay. So
would you be okay if we called you BIPOC?
How do you feel about can we classify you as a BIPOC designer? To say that we have BIPOC designers, and so it's nice, but I don't know.
So these also come in February more so than in July.
They come in February, and they come less now than they did before. Following the movement.
People were throwing money at us 2 years ago.
Yeah, I got so used to this. And I had a friend, and she was like, "Don't get so used to this. Okay, we have to make a plan. We gotta make a plan for when this dries up. Okay." So this is our plan. We're devising a plan. And we sat down and stuff. But I'm really happy for the door that it has opened, because it's not that Black designers were saying, "Hey, pick me because I'm Black." It's I don't have the access and the opportunities that a lot of my white counterparts have, and if you could give me that access and the opportunity, just a chair at the table, and then if you welcome me to the table and you like what I have, then buy it. Right. But if you don't like what I have, then that's another story. You know what I mean? If I'm designing trash, then you wouldn't buy trash from anyone. But I just at least want the seat. I at least want the opportunity. I at least want the ability and the access to be able to present what I have. And what we found during the pandemic is there's so much talent. Black designers who are like undiscovered, lying in waiting, looking for someone to just please. If I could just have, one of the statistics from the 15% pledge is that that when a Black designer starts a business, they're starting with about $35,000 if they can get that. That's at the high end. Yeah. And then if a white designer is starting, or a white business owner, not just designer, is starting a business, they're starting with $275,000 on average. And that's just because of economic positioning and opportunity and family money and what I mean, and those sort of things. So it is the fact that Black designers don't have the opportunity and the access, and that's all we wanted, and the pandemic sort of brought light to that, and I think a lot of really wonderful talent was discovered in that moment.
And what has your experience been like even with customers in terms of customer reception? So I've had many discussions with Black designers who have had the experience of customers feeling like they were too expensive or they wanted it on discount, and they would say, well, when you go to Gucci, you don't even expect to get a discount, and you can't wait to get on the gram with that on. Have you had that experience, or has your experience been different?
In the beginning, we have. I think it's just about expanding and finding your customer base, because there is always someone who's going to pay what you are asking. If they really love the brand, they really believe in what you're doing.
We've alluded a lot to this platform that you are currently partnered with, it's Resonance. Can you tell us a little bit about what Resonance is and how you got connected with it?
Yes, it's so we just had a call about this morning. One of our mentors was asking some questions. So Resonance is a company and operating, I guess we consider them our operating partners. We were connected with Resonance during the pandemic. They were offering a grant to BIPOC designers, $50,000, most of which is in resources to produce a collection. And we didn't understand that that's what they were offering. We were just applying for everything that we can get our fingers on in the pandemic.
And we found out later that it wasn't going to just be money toward our already existing handbag collection, but we were going to have to develop a brand new collection. So what Resonance offers is existing bodies, a lot of very basic silhouettes, which you'll see is most of our collection, beautiful silk shirts, silk dresses, denim jackets, and they give you the opportunity to create your one, is what we call it. So you can customize that body with your prints and your artwork. And so what they do is they produce sustainably in the Dominican Republic. They have a huge factory that they've built. It's all done ethically. The workers are paid a fair wage. It uses 50% less water in the process, 50% less electricity. And so we partnered even deeper with them in recent times to create the ready-to-wear that we have.
It's hard to get on Resonance.
What'd you say?
Here all the time.
It's hard to get on Resonance. I don't know.
How'd you do it?
Yes.
Well, I was hopping through the grant, right? So I think there were a lot of people that applied for the grant, and you had to design a collection in order to be considered. And our collection that we designed was very print heavy, and we didn't even understand that that's what would be something that they would be looking for as far as the grant was concerned. But it was so print heavy, it was so much color, and they were excited. They kind of almost used us as an experiment. Because they were just sort of launching this process.
And so they wanted to see all this color on their garments. And so we were selected, and because it's just worked so well, I think when we had partnered with them, we had an opportunity to meet with a Saks buyer to show them ready to wear, but we didn't have any samples. So Resonance helped us to CAD up a full collection of these simple bodies, these basic bodies with lots of prints. In Saks purchased our first collection with just.
We were so shocked. We only showed them CADs, and it was in the middle of the pandemic. And she's like, "We've already been looking at it. We want this, and this, and this, and this, and this." And I was like, "What?" And she said, "We'll send the buy tomorrow." I said, "What?" Okay. And then when something like that happens, we just pace back and forth for like 10 minutes, and we don't even realize we're pacing until we realize we're pacing. Okay, we need to sit down and do the work now, because it just becomes like a huge shock. But Resonance, we went to Dominican Republic. We were there for almost 2 weeks, just to kind of before we decided to partner deeper, which is happening in recent times, just so we can kind of see the truth behind everything, the real process. And it's really impressive. And I think it's just the beginning of where fashion is going, because part of the sustainable model is, aside from if we get a wholesale buy, then we produce bulk, but it's made to order. So
and they do that too, right? The bulk production.
Yeah, they do the bulk production too, and that has been a process too, because they weren't necessarily equipped for bulk production initially, and a lot of what we're doing has pushed a lot of the limits and the bands of what they do. And they honestly would prefer if we didn't sell at retailers and that we would just sell from our website. And we have to say to them, "Hey guys, we want to be at the retailer. So this is going to happen. This is going to happen." We have to kind of fight for certain things, as far as the platform is concerned. But it's a good conversation. It's a good discourse to have with them, and expanding their mind for what a designer needs. An emerging designer, you need to be in those stores, you need to be on those floors for visibility. So it's been a really wonderful process.
Is the bulk of your business right now direct to consumer, or is it brick and mortar?
It is
balancing out.
Yeah, I think it's balancing out nowadays. It used to be brick and mortar, like in the retailers that we're in, and some of the retailers are just online. But now our DTC is also kind of balancing out too, and I think that it's owed large part into the retailers, being in the retailers, because someone will discover our brand there, and then they'll come to our website and they'll buy more. And sometimes they write us emails saying, "I discovered your brand at Shop. I discovered your brand at Bloomingdale. I discovered your brand at Saks, and I'm just in love. And now I'm buying these things." And that's, what I mean. And we have some customers that I can even name, that I can bring them out. Every time we drop something new, they buy something.
Because Resonance offers base forms, how customizable are those forms? So if you want to take that silk dress and you want to add like a pocket or this or a sleeve or that.
You better not add no pocket. No, I'm joking. No, so there's a process. I mean, there's like a lot of behind, back end processes that would be called a modification.
Right.
What you just described. It's a little lengthy of a process because they have like a lot of steps to get to the end result. But it's possible, and we recently even developed bodies in LA. And gotten the pattern made and had the sample made with their fabric, and then on the back end had them put that body in their system.
Yeah,
so
full production.
That's possible as well.
No, that's really
It's a bit of a process, and we're hoping over the next year or so to streamline that process and make it quicker. But it's possible, and that's like one of the reasons why we're going to Dominican Republic often. It's a pretty cheap flight, and the stay over there is pretty cheap too. But we're going back and forth, to try to like sort of streamline those processes and like expand. And part of us partnering with them is us bringing our knowledge as designers, and it's like that Christina Aguilera song. What a designer wants, what a designer needs.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
So they're really wanting to know what a designer needs, and that's part of the
they're
process.
They're open to critique. They tell us all the time, push us, tell us what you want. Even if we can't do it now, it doesn't mean no. It just means in due time. Yeah.
All right, we are getting a little tight on time, but there's still a couple things I want to ask you. I want some hot takes.
Okay.
Fashion show, is it worth it?
Yes. I mean, if you're able to do it at a scale like this, and I'm looking at this video and I'm cringing every time I watch. Once we do something, I gotta move on. I can't. You know what I mean? Because I'm looking at this show and I'm cringing at so many parts of it because in my mind I know all the things that were wrong.
Yes.
But we had the opportunity to partner with Afterpay, which was a really wonderful opportunity because they paid for a lot of what went on, and we worked with a wonderful PR company that got all the names out to the show, and it was hugely successful with visibility for the brand. People write us all the time talking about this show all the time. So yes, I think it's well worth it.
So are you going to be showing on a regular schedule?
We are, yes, and we'll be in Milan this year.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right.
We just got an email.
We love.
They're paying for us for everything, so we got to go. We go.
All right, this is one that I've actually been pondering for quite some time. After many starts and stops, we can go all the way back to Stephen Burrows. Mm-hmm. There was, obviously there was Russell with Baby Fat and Fat Farm. There was the guys behind FUBU. There's Sean John. Most recently, there's Pierre Moss. There's been a lot of opportunities where we've had some momentum, 40 acres and a mule. I can go on and on.
Yeah.
A lot of momentum, but we still haven't been able to produce a Black-owned brand that has the staying power of like a Ralph or a Tommy or even a Calvin, even though that's undergone some kind of interesting changes recently. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is?
To be quite honest, the system really isn't designed for us to win. If we want to strip it down to the bare bones, in the fashion industry in itself is such. I think even more so nowadays, it's such a challenging industry because you have so much fast fashion. You have just so many things that you're competing with. And I think it's really just about establishing a brand identity that people will resonate with, and that will become something that people resonate with over years. I think it's really important to establish that identity, know who you are, stick with that, and build it out. I think for us, that was key in launching BruceGlen or relaunching BruceGlen in 2019. And even though we're in certain retailers and they'll be like, do you have anything more? Or do you have anything less? And we'll say, no, I'm sorry, this is kind of like what we do and this is what we offer. And I think that sort of standing in one's, aesthetic and identity is what will make you a long-lasting brand.
So you saying stay consistent You know, because the truth of the matter is, like, we were just talking about this the other day. We've had many times when we've given up on a dream, you know, over the 16-year process where we started. We've done little capsule collections in between. We've done projects for other people. We freelanced for Tommy Hill, you know, all these things. And then we started a line again when we had a little more money, and then that line didn't do well. And then we did accessories. We did slapstick leather cuffs for a long time, which were those 90s slapstick cuffs with leather and Swarovski jewels. And we stopped and started so many times. And recently, in 2019, when we restarted, that was just because we felt from God, to be quite honest, to do it. God spoke to us and told us to dream again, because we had stopped. And at that point, our dream was to just work in fashion, become the CEOs and the presidents of companies. And that's what we were on track to do. And God told us not to get comfortable and not to stop dreaming. And that it was only a matter of time, that if we stayed consistent, if we stayed ready with a product or something to present, that He would provide the opportunity. And that's what we did.
Gentlemen, I am so honored and thankful that you have chosen to join us today. This is the first in a series of discussions of this nature, and it is very intentional on my part that you two, we had this discussion earlier, but I was telling you that I was looking and trying to figure out if we couldn't get a pop-up on the men's store. There's still no retailer for the menswear, right? Not brick and mortar.
No retailer.
We're
Looking to dive into that.
We're looking for someone to partner deep with it.
I was asking some questions about that. I'll continue to do that. But it is very intentional that you're here today. It is very intentional that you're here on Juneteenth. I cannot thank you enough. It's been amazing to have this discussion with you. There's so much of that I didn't get to that I wanted to get to, but we'll have to one-off on that at a later time. Does anyone have any questions? Are you guys open to a few questions? If anyone has any.
We're not going to take any questions.
What's going on, Michael?
Yeah, my question is, once you're established, could you go back to a company like Shark Tank or Damien John and say, hey, I need help to the next level?
I honestly think that that's the next level for any brand that's, you know, in our position. Like, I still consider us emerging. I think we're still emerging, right? I think that eventually partnering with someone with a lot of money, you know, this is where you see, like, I used to wonder, like, one day I saw Alexander Wang, the brand, and then the next day I saw a billboard in Soho.
And
I'm like, how?
I'm
like, where's he getting this money? And then, like, you learn that, you know, LVMH has partnered with him, and Anna Wintour is behind it. So I think eventually, somewhere along the way, you need that. And I think it doesn't necessarily have to come from an LVMH. It could come from maybe a Tyler Perry. You know what I mean? Let's say Tyler, okay? Because Tyler's our hero right now. He's got 2 networks. You know, it could come from a Tyler Perry, but I do think that eventually to take it to that next level, because we at this point cannot get a billboard in Soho. You know what I mean? We can't. But with the backing of someone who believes in the brand and is willing to take it and push it to the next level, I think definitely that is
someone who's willing to pump some money for some employees, some more marketing, all those things.
Buy us a floor in one of these buildings downtown so we can have
get us a company car, a G-Wagon.
Okay, all right. Please. Any other questions? What's up?
Which one is over?
Oh,
I am 2 minutes. Yes, I'll tell you something about BruceGlen.
Yes, Daphne.
BruceGlen is a lifestyle brand.
okay.
So we eventually, like, you see this shelf, like these imagine all those glasses and color and prints on the plates and that frame
Iridescence.
and iridescence and rhinestones and glitter. You know, that we want to expand into a full lifestyle. You know, you wake up in BruceGlen sheets, you put your feet in BruceGlen slippers, you walk to your BruceGlen bathroom and put your BruceGlen toothbrush in your BruceGlen teeth mouth.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Anyone else? Going once?
I got one more question. When I first walked into the room, I noticed the colors you guys are wearing, and it reminded me a lot of Betsy Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Has she ever come to you and said,
No, Betsy Johnson. No, Betsy Johnson has never come to me.
Betsy Johnson.
But you know what? I loved Betsy Johnson shows when we were like coming up in fashion and like watching and studying. I love the energy of her show. You know, I always resonated with that. And even though I love the energy of her show, when we tried to do our own fashion line, it was very like, because I thought that was more of what the industry was looking for. But now I understand why I resonated with Betsy Johnson and the way and the energy of her show and her flip, her cartwheel that she would do at the end of each seat, at the end of each runway show, because that is more of the energy of who we truly are. And then also what our brand is now, because it's an extension. Our brand is an extension of who we are. So like if you see our runway show, we had a lot of fun. And it wasn't intentional. We didn't say we're gonna all dance with people at the end of the show. It was just in the moment and the energy of it. It was so alive. It was like a church fashion show. It was like, yes, baby, go ahead. You know, eat. No crumbs left. You know, they were saying that. And it was, the energy of it was so fun and so alive. And so many people said this was the best show that I went to during Fashion Week because the clothes beautiful, wonderful, but the energy, like in combination with the clothes, and the models smiled and interacted with the people. You know what I mean? So that's what we want to be infused, even through the clothing and the housewares and the slippers and everything.
All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you once again for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
It's a wrap on that.
Come on, can we give a round of applause to Tawdry for putting this together? This is important. This is going, wow. Thank you so much.